was July the 2nd that the Second Continental Congress decided to vote independence from England. And that was a debate that had been scheduled for a while. It occurred for over a few days, and July the 2nd was the day that they actually voted to be independent. It was 12 of the states that were there that voted for it. New York was not there at the time. And John Adams wrote to his wife, Abigail, that this will be the most important day in the history of America, and for 1,000 years we'll celebrate this with fireworks. So some of you may say, why do we celebrate the 4th of July? Well, very briefly, and I will be brief because I think I've told this story to some of you before, right after they had the vote on July the 2nd, they took up a document that Thomas Jefferson had largely drafted as part of a committee of John Adams, Benjamin Franklin, Robert Livingston, and Roger Sherman. And that document was really just supposed to be an explanation to the public of why we were breaking away. It was called the Declaration of Independence by Thomas Jefferson. He came up with the title. It didn't have any legal impact. There was no legal force to it. It was just a propaganda document, you could say. They began the debate on it on July the 2nd, and the 3rd, and the 4th. And finally on the 4th, after changing about 35% of what Jefferson had written, it was agreed to. And it wasn't seen as that significant at the time because they continued business the rest of the day. It wasn't like as if they said, okay, we just agreed to the Declaration of Independence, let's go pat ourselves on the back and have a drink or something. They just continued on their business. They then arranged to have it printed, distributed around the United States. George Washington got a copy to read to the troops, sent a copy to King George, and so forth. And well, the reason we celebrate the 4th of July rather than the 2nd is because 1 year later, when the Continental Congress was in session, they were so busy on July the 2nd, they forgot until the end of the day that it was July the 2nd. So they said, oh no. So they said, we got to celebrate. So it took them a day, July the 3rd, to organize the celebration that occurred on July the 4th. So they celebrated on July the 4th. Now, this is historically not that significant, I guess, whether you celebrate July the 2nd or July the 4th, but it was to two people. John Adams was the person who thought the most significant thing in the world was the day we voted to be independent. That was the real vote. Thomas Jefferson, who wrote the Declaration of Independence, obviously thought July the 4th was more important because we agreed to the language. So over the 50 years from that point on that they both lived, they died exactly 50 years today, on July the 4th, later, they had a personal relationship that was off and on, but I think they didn't like the fact John Adams didn't like the fact they were celebrating July the 4th, and of course Thomas Jefferson thought that it was the appropriate day.